Hello everyone, let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked at your partner, not as the person you split bills with, or the one who reminds you to pick up groceries, but as the lover who once made your heart race? The person whose touch felt electric, whose voice could disarm you, whose absence you couldn't stand. Somewhere between the morning rush and the late night exhaustion, between raising children and building careers, between the thousand tiny negotiations of daily life, something shifts. Desire, which once came so naturally, begins to feel complicated. Intimacy, which once was effortless, now feels like another thing on the to-do list. And maybe, without even noticing when it happened, you look around and realize the spark is dim. You love your partner, but the closeness, the kind that makes your body ache with wanting, that feels far away. And here's the truth, you're not alone. This is the untold story of countless marriages. It doesn't mean your relationship is broken. It means it's alive, because desire doesn't die, it gets buried under routines, resentments, and unspoken words. But it can be uncovered, rekindled, rewritten. So today we're going to explore why couples stop being intimate and how they can find their way back, not to what they once had, but to something deeper, wiser, and even more passionate. You know, one of the things I hear most often from couples who come to me is not, we don't love each other anymore. It's not even, we don't want to be together. What they say in quiet, almost embarrassed tones is this, we don't touch each other the way we used to. And hidden beneath that confession is the ache of something larger. We don't feel alive together the way we once did. It's easy to think that intimacy fades simply because of time, that the years together dull the spark, that passion has an expiration date. But that isn't true. What time does is reveal the tension between love and desire, between comfort and excitement. Love thrives on security, on the known, on the familiar. But desire thrives on mystery, on distance, on the unknown. And in long-term relationships, we often feed one while starving the other. Think about how a relationship begins. In the early days, everything feels fresh. You see your partner dressed up for you, making an effort, revealing little pieces of themselves bit by bit. You don't know everything yet, their inner world, their habits, their scars. That mystery is intoxicating. But over time, as you share a home, a life, maybe even children, that mystery fades. You see each other in the morning with unbrushed hair, at night with exhaustion etched into your faces. You know each other's routines so well that surprise has almost no place left. And so, without even realizing, the erotic space begins to shrink, not because love has died, but because mystery has. Desire needs space to breathe, and many couples unknowingly smother it under the weight of too much closeness. We confuse intimacy with merging, believing that the more we know every detail of each other, the stronger our bond will be. But the paradox is that desire doesn't live in total knowing. It lives in the gap, in the little space between us where imagination can play. Let me give you an example. I once spoke with a couple who had been married for 15 years. They told me, we adore each other. We talk about everything. We share everything. But the more we've become one, the less we've wanted each other. And when I asked them to describe what they missed, their eyes softened. They missed the longing, the anticipation, the waiting for the other person to arrive. They missed the hunger that comes not from having, but from wanting. This is the first reason intimacy fades in marriage, the loss of erotic distance. When we collapse every mystery, when we leave no room for imagination, desire has no place to grow. So what do? We learn to cultivate space again. That doesn't mean pulling away or becoming strangers. It means remembering that your partner is not an extension of you. They are their own person. They have a world that is not yours, their own thoughts, their own fears, their own dreams. When you can see them as separate again, you can desire them again. Because desire is sparked not by what we possess, but by what we glimpse and cannot fully hold. Let's be honest, this is not always easy. Life is demanding. Children, work, finances, health, these are not small things. And yet, so many couples discover that when they begin to bring curiosity back into their relationship, when they allow their partner to be someone they don't fully know, intimacy begins to stir again. It could be as simple as asking a new question instead of assuming you already know the answer. It could be allowing yourself to notice your partner from a distance, watching them laugh with someone else, or seeing them absorbed in something they love. These are small invitations to remember that the person beside you is not fully yours, and in that recognition, desire can return. But let's move deeper, because distance alone isn't the whole story. Another powerful reason couples stop being intimate is resentment. And resentment is like a slow poison in the bedroom. Resentment doesn't always announce itself with shouting matches or slammed doors. Often, it's quieter, it's the unspoken disappointments, the unequal distribution of responsibility, the times one partner felt unseen or unheard and never truly voiced it. Over the years, these little wounds accumulate. And in many marriages, they don't show up first in conversation, they show up in desire. One partner withdraws not because they've stopped wanting intimacy, but because intimacy has become entangled with anger, with hurt, with fatigue. Think of a couple where one person carries more of the household load. Maybe she feels like she has two jobs, her career and the invisible labor of the home. Or maybe he feels constantly criticized. as though nothing he does is enough. These tensions don't just stay in the kitchen or in the calendar, they follow us into the bedroom. Because desire cannot flourish where there is resentment. You cannot open your body to someone you secretly feel is taking from you more than they're giving. So what's the antidote? It is not just more sex. It's more honesty. Resentment grows in silence, but it dissolves in dialogue. That means having the courage to say, I feel tired, I feel unsupported, I feel unappreciated. And it also means being willing to hear your partner when they say the same. This is not an easy conversation, but couples who are willing to face the hard truths outside the bedroom often find that intimacy slowly returns inside it. And here's something essential to remember: passion does not only require mystery, it requires generosity. Desire is not simply about taking, it's about giving. It's about creating space for the other person to feel cherished, admired, wanted. And when resentment blocks generosity, passion withers. But when appreciation returns, when gratitude is spoken, when the small daily gestures of care reappear, the erotic space can reopen. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, this is us, we love each other, but something has faded, know that you are not broken. You are human. Intimacy is not lost. It is waiting beneath the layers of routine, of resentment, of over-familiarity. And the journey back is possible. When we begin to peel back the layers of why intimacy fades, we often expect to find something dramatic: infidelity, betrayal, a shocking revelation. And yes, sometimes those things do happen. But far more often, what I see is something much quieter, something so ordinary that couples almost don't notice it until the silence between them feels deafening. It's the erosion of play, the disappearance of lightness. Think back to the beginning of your relationship. There was laughter, flirting, teasing. You could spend hours in conversation that wandered with no agenda. You could be silly together, mischievous, spontaneous. And without realizing it, that playfulness was erotic. It made space for desire. Because eroticism is not only about sex, it is about vitality, about feeling alive, about entering a space where rules bend and possibilities expand. But over time, responsibility crowds out play. The household becomes a workplace. The relationship becomes a project. Intimacy becomes one more task on the checklist. We talk about bills, about the children, about schedules, but we stop talking in the language of desire. We stop playing. And when there is no play, there is no arrows. I remember a couple who came to me after nearly 20 years together. They told me, we don't fight. We function well, but it feels like we're business partners, not lovers. And as I listened, it became clear that their relationship had become efficient but joyless. They were organized, responsible, reliable, and utterly devoid of play. So we began to reintroduce it. At first, it felt awkward, almost childish. They scheduled date nights not to discuss logistics, but to do something silly, something neither of them was good at. They danced in their living room. They wrote each other notes like teenagers. Slowly, they discovered that playfulness was the missing bridge back to intimacy. This is one of the great misunderstandings about long-term relationships, that seriousness makes them stronger. In fact, it is play that gives them resilience. Couples who laugh together, who create moments of lightness, are also couples who can weather the storms. Because when you can be playful, you can also be vulnerable. You can reveal your softer, sillier self. And that openness is deeply erotic. But there is another reason intimacy fades, one that is more personal, more hidden. Sometimes it isn't about the couple at all. Sometimes it's about the individual relationship each person has with themselves. You see, desire begins with self. It is very difficult to feel alive in your body with another person if you do not feel alive in your body on your own. When we stop taking care of ourselves, not just physically, but emotionally, we stop bringing energy into the relationship. The bedroom becomes heavy with fatigue, with disconnection, with self-neglect. I often hear from people who say, I want my partner to desire me. But when I ask, do you feel desirable yourself? They pause, because often the answer is no. It's not always about beauty or youth. It's about energy. It's about how connected you feel to your own vitality. If you are constantly exhausted, if you carry unresolved stress, if you feel unattractive in your own skin, intimacy will struggle. This is why one of the most overlooked pathways back to intimacy is not what you do with your partner, it's what you do with yourself. Movement, creativity, solitude. Anything that reconnects you to your own sense of aliveness will ripple into the relationship. I remember one man who began painting again after years of ignoring his art. He told me, at first, it was just for me. But suddenly I noticed I felt different around my wife. I felt more confident, more alive. And she noticed too. It is tempting to think that desire is something your partner gives you. But in truth, desire is something you bring to them. When you feel connected to your own erotic self, you make space for intimacy to grow. And here we come to another hidden challenge, the weight of routine. Routines can be comforting. They provide stability, predictability, safety. But routine is also the enemy of excitement. When sex becomes scheduled in the same way dinner does, when it happens at the same time, in the same place, in the same way, desire begins to suffocate. Because desire needs surprise, it needs novelty, it needs the unexpected. Now, I know many of you listening may think, but how do we create surprise when our lives are so structured? And the truth is, novelty does not have to mean extravagance. It does not require expensive vacations or elaborate gestures. It can be as simple as changing the context, making love at a different time of day, leaving the bedroom, trying something that feels playful or daring. In fact, some of the most intimate moments couples share are not grand but small. An unexpected touch in the kitchen, a whisper in the ear when the children are asleep, a playful glance across the table. These tiny moments interrupt routine and remind your partner, I still see you not only as my spouse, but as my lover. One woman told me that her husband surprised her one evening by asking her to step outside with him. He had set up candles in the backyard and played their favorite song. It was nothing extravagant, but the act of breaking routine, of creating an unexpected moment, brought them closer than they had felt in months. So if we look at the patterns so far, what do we see? We see that intimacy fades when distance disappears, when resentment builds, when play vanishes, when self-neglect takes hold, and when routine hardens into predictability. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of life. They are reminders that intimacy is not something you achieve once and then keep forever. It is something you cultivate again and again through intention. And perhaps the most radical thing I can tell you is this: intimacy is not natural. It is not automatic. It does not flow endlessly just because you love each other. It requires tending like a fire. And like a fire, it needs both fuel and oxygen. Too much closeness smothers it. Too much distance extinguishes it. The art of intimacy is learning how to balance the two. As we move forward, I want you to hold on to this. Intimacy does not simply vanish. It transforms. And couples who learn to meet those transformations with curiosity instead of fear often discover that what lies on the other side of difficulty is a connection deeper, richer, and more passionate than they ever imagined. When we think about intimacy, we often imagine it as something physical: touch, closeness, sex. But beneath all of that lies something even more essential: communication. Not just any communication, but the kind that allows two people to feel seen and desired. And here's the painful reality: many couples stop being intimate because they stop communicating in a way that fuels desire. They talk about logistics, they talk about problems, they talk about the children, the bills, the house. But they no longer talk in the language of longing. They no longer share their fantasies, their fears, their dreams. Their conversations are full, yet hollow. And the silence around intimacy grows louder with each passing year. I once worked with a couple who had been married for 22 years. They said to me, "We are best friends. We talk all the time. But when it comes to intimacy, we feel like strangers." What was missing wasn't love or affection. It was erotic communication. They had never learned to say, "This is what excites me. This is what I imagine. This is what I crave." Their silence wasn't born out of disinterest. It was born out of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of breaking the fragile balance of the relationship. But intimacy thrives in honesty. And honesty is not only about sharing what bothers you. It is about sharing what you desire. When you dare to tell your partner what you long for, when you let them into your inner erotic world, you create a bridge between fantasy and reality. And that bridge is where passion lives. Of course, this isn't easy. Many of us grew up in cultures where desire was shamed, where talking about sex was taboo, where wanting was considered selfish or wrong. So we enter marriage with love in our hearts but silence in our mouths. And over time, that silence becomes a wall. The antidote is vulnerability. It's not about shocking your partner with wild confessions. It's about taking small steps toward openness, saying, "I like when you touch me this way," or "I've been imagining what it would feel like if we tried this." These small revelations reignite curiosity. They tell your partner, "There are still parts of me you don't know, and I want to share them with you." But there is another piece to this puzzle, one that is often overlooked: the body. As we age, as our lives evolve, our bodies change. Hormone energy levels drop, illness, stress, even medications. These can all affect desire. And yet many couples treat these changes as evidence of failure, as proof that intimacy is gone for good. But the truth is, desire is resilient. It adapts. It asks us to expand our definition of intimacy, to include touch, closeness, sensuality, and pleasure in forms that go beyond performance or youth. I once heard a woman say, "I thought passion ended with menopause." But what I discovered is that intimacy is not just about reproduction, it's about connection. Once I let go of what intimacy should look like, I began to discover what it could look like. This is one of the most profound shifts couples can make, moving away from a rigid idea of what intimacy is supposed to be and opening to what intimacy can become. Sometimes that means slower touch, more focus on sensation, less emphasis on performance. Sometimes it means creating rituals of closeness that don't always lead to sex, but keep the erotic connection alive. The couples who thrive are not the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who are willing to reinvent intimacy again and again. They are the ones who say, "Our love story doesn't end with routine. Our desire doesn't die with time. We will write new chapters, even if it means starting with a blank page. And this brings me to perhaps the most important truth of all: intimacy is a practice. It is not a destination you reach once and hold forever. It is something you tend, something you nurture, something you return to over and over with intention. Because here is the paradox. Marriage is built on stability, but desire is fueled by uncertainty. And couples who learn to hold both, the safety of love and the thrill of desire, are the ones who keep intimacy alive. So if you are listening right now and you feel that spark has dimmed, do not despair. It is not gone. It is waiting. Beneath the routines, beneath the unspoken resentments, beneath the silence, intimacy is still alive, and it can be awakened not by magic, but by presence, by play, by curiosity, by honesty, and by care. You see, the beauty of intimacy in long-term relationships is not that it stays the same. It's that it evolves, it deepens, it becomes richer, more layered, more human. It is not about recapturing who you were in the beginning. It's about discovering who you can become together now. And perhaps that is the ultimate secret. Passion is not about going back. It is about moving forward together. So as you think about your own relationship, I want you to ask yourself, not how do I get back to what we once had, but instead, what do I want us to create now? What story of intimacy do I want us to write in this chapter of our lives? Because love is not static. Desire is not static, and intimacy, when nurtured, can be more powerful in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond than it ever was in your 20s. And that, my friends, is the gift of time. When we talk about rekindling intimacy, it's easy to imagine some grand solution, a perfect vacation, a new wardrobe, a dramatic gesture that somehow erases years of distance. But intimacy doesn't return with fireworks. It returns with small, deliberate acts repeated over time that slowly remind two people of their ability to desire and be desired. And the first of those acts is attention. Think about how often we look at our phones, at our screens, at our to-do lists, and how rarely we truly look at our partner. Not the glance in passing, not the distracted nod while they're speaking, but the kind of gaze that says, I see you, I notice you, you matter to me. When couples stop being intimate, often it's not because they've stopped touching, it's because they've stopped seeing. One man told me, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I looked at my wife across the dinner table and really noticed her, not as the mother of my children, not as my co-worker in the house, but as the woman I once couldn't stop staring at. So he made a practice of it. Every evening, even for just a minute, he put down his phone, looked at her face, and let himself feel the appreciation he once felt. And slowly she began to notice too. The air between them shifted. Attention is not trivial. It is erotic, because desire begins with being seen. The second practice is curiosity. Many couples believe they already know everything about each other. They assume there are no surprises left. But human beings are not finished books. We are unfolding stories. And when you approach your partner with curiosity, as if there is still more to discover, you invite mystery back into the relationship. Ask questions you've never asked before. Not just, how was your day? But, what did you dream about when you were younger? What do you secretly wish for now? What is something you've never told me because you thought I wouldn't understand? One woman shared that her husband asked her, out of the blue, what's something you want to try in the next 5 years that has nothing to do with work or family? She laughed at first. No one had asked her that in decades. But the question stayed with her, and later when she answered, it opened a new dimension of their relationship. Suddenly, they weren't just parents and partners, they were adventurers again, discovering new pieces of each other. Curiosity keeps the erotic alive because it says you are still a mystery to me, and I want to keep exploring. Another pathway back to intimacy is touch, without agenda. For many couples, physical contact becomes either perfunctory, a quick peck on the cheek, a pat on the back, or entirely sexual. But the space in between, sensual, affectionate, lingering touch, often disappears. And yet this is where desire is nurtured. Try touching your partner without expectation. A hand on the back as they pass by, a hug that lasts longer than a few seconds, sitting close enough on the couch to feel each other's warmth. These are not small things. They are reminders to the body that connection still exists. I spoke once with a couple who began a practice of simply lying down together, fully clothed, and holding each other for 10 minutes every evening. No sex, no pressure, just closeness. At first, it felt almost mechanical, but soon, they noticed that their bodies began to relax, the tension softened, and eventually intimacy returned, not because they forced it, but because they created space for it. Another practice is play. We spoke earlier about how play disappears under the weight of responsibility. Bringing it back doesn't mean acting like children. It means reintroducing lightness. It means making room for moments of silliness, of laughter, of surprise. One couple began sending each other flirtatious text messages during the day, something they hadn't done since they were dating. At first, it felt awkward, even forced, but then it became fun. It reminded them of the time when desire was spontaneous, and that playfulness carried into the bedroom. Because here's the truth, sex is serious business. Desire thrives on joy, on laughter, on the freedom to be playful without fear. And finally, perhaps the most transformative practice is ritual. Rituals are not routines. Routines are automatic. Rituals are intentional. They mark moments as sacred, as meaningful. And when couples create rituals of intimacy, they remind themselves that their relationship is not just another item on the calendar. It is something to be cherished. It could be a ritual of kissing before bed, no matter what. A ritual of sharing one thing you appreciate about each other at the end of the day. A ritual of taking a walk together every Sunday, just the two of you. These small acts repeated with intention build an atmosphere where intimacy can thrive. Because intimacy is not built in grand gestures. It is built in the daily choices to turn toward each other. And here is the secret that so many couples overlook. Intimacy is not about frequency. It is not about numbers, about how often you have sex, about comparing yourself to some imagined standard. Intimacy is about presence. It is about how connected you feel, how alive you feel, how much you allow yourself to be both seen and to see. So if you want to bring intimacy back into your marriage, don't start with pressure. Start with presence. Start with attention, curiosity, touch, play, and ritual. These are the pathways that lead back to desire. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly, steadily, with intention. Because intimacy is not lost. It is waiting. So here we are. At the heart of it all, we've explored the loss of mystery, the weight of resentment, the disappearance of play, the neglect of self, the deadening rhythm of routine, and the silence around desire. We've talked about attention, curiosity, touch, playfulness, and ritual as ways back into intimacy. But if there is one thing I want you to carry with you from this conversation, it is this: intimacy is not something that dies with time. It is something that waits for you to notice it again. So many couples believe that passion belongs only to the beginning, that what follows must inevitably be a slow decline into companionship without desire. But this is not the truth. The truth is that intimacy matures, it shifts, it deepens. And while it may not look like the dizzying passion of your early days, it can become something far richer, the intimacy of two people who choose each other, not once, but again and again, in every stage of life. Think of intimacy as a garden. In the beginning, it grows wild, vibrant, untamed. Over time, if left unattended, weeds creep in, the soil hardens, the flowers stop blooming. But this doesn't mean the garden is gone. It means it needs tending, it needs water, care, pruning, attention. And when you tend to it, the garden flourishes again, not as it was before, but as something even more beautiful, because now it carries the wisdom of seasons. I remember speaking with a couple who had been married for over 30 years. They came to me saying, "We love each other deeply, but we feel like roommates." They wanted passion back, but they feared it was too late. Yet what they discovered slowly was that desire doesn't expire. They began to look at each other with new eyes, to touch without expectation, to ask new questions, to create rituals of closeness. And one day the wife said to me, with tears in her eyes, "I feel like I've fallen in love with my husband again, but not as the man I married at 25, as the man he is now." That is the beauty of intimacy. It allows us to fall in love again and again, not with who our partner was, but with who they are becoming. And maybe this is the secret we forget, that love is not static, that marriage is not a contract signed once and forgotten, that intimacy is not guaranteed by years together. It is built, tended, chosen, again and again. So if you are listening right now and you feel distance in your marriage, I want you to release the shame. You are not broken. You are not alone. The absence of intimacy is not proof of failure. It is an invitation to pause, to reflect, to turn toward each other instead of away, to ask, what do we want to create together now? Because here is the truth: you cannot change the past, but you can always shape the future. And intimacy is built in the choices you make today, in the glance you give across the room, in the question you ask at dinner, in the hand you reach for before sleep. Small choices, repeated with love, build the foundation for passion to return. And I want to remind you of something else. Intimacy is not just for the young. It is not just for the newly in love. It belongs to every stage of life. In fact, some of the most passionate couples I have ever met were in their 60s and 70s. Why? Because they had shed the weight of pretense. They no longer felt the need to perform or impress. They were free to simply be with each other, to savor connection in its purest form. So do not let age or time or routine convince you that intimacy is over. It is waiting. It is always waiting. And as you leave this conversation, I want you to hold one final thought. Intimacy is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is not about endless desire, but about moments of desire cultivated, noticed, cherished. It is about saying, I see you, I want you, I choose you. So tonight, when you sit beside your partner, I want you to do something small. Look at them, really look, reach for their hand. Ask a question you've never asked. Create a moment that interrupts the ordinary and notice what happens. Notice the shift in the air, the spark that flickers, the connection that begins to reawaken. Because intimacy doesn't return all at once. It returns in moments. And those moments, when strung together, create a life. So here's my invitation to you. Don't wait for the spark to magically return. Be the one who lights it. Be the one who tends to it. Be the one who chooses intimacy over and over every single day. And if this conversation has resonated with you, I would love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, What part of your relationship feels alive? What part feels quiet? And what is one small step you're willing to take to bring intimacy back? If you found this helpful, please give this video a like. It helps more couples find these words. And don't forget to subscribe so you can continue this journey with me as we explore the ways love and desire intertwine in our lives. Because at the end of the day, intimacy is not about avoiding struggle. It is about learning how to dance with it. It is about remembering that love is a verb, desire is a practice, and intimacy is the art of choosing again and again the person who stands before you. And so I leave you with this. May you look at your partner tonight not with the eyes of routine, but with the eyes of wonder. May you see not just the person you know, but the mystery that still remains. May you remember that passion is not behind you. It is ahead of you, waiting to be created, waiting to be lived, waiting to be shared. Here's to love that grows deeper with time, to desire that matures into richness, and to intimacy that is never lost, only waiting to be found.